This is the Justicefighter podcast. Justicefighter podcast. With attorney Gerald Griggs. Attorney G. Where we have conversations on social justice, civil rights, and political news that affects us all. Let attorney Griggs put you on game. Only on the Justicefighter podcast, y'all.
There are certain names that now Ahmaud Arbery has joined the cadre of individuals who've fallen victim. People like Veltavius Griggs, people like Jimmy Atchison, people like Katherine Johnston, people like Kane Rogers, people like Oscar Kane, just to name a few. And the issue is an issue of accountability. And we have to hold this community, the powerful, accountable for that accountability. It started a long time ago, not just in Brunswick, but now Brunswick is the focus for the change that needs to happen in Georgia and the world. So we stand shoulder to shoulder, not only with the Arbery family, but all the other families, because we are not going to say that this is a one-off. This is standard practice in Georgia. It's standard practice for the GBI to investigate, and then we wait years upon years upon years. Sometimes there's justice, like in Anthony Hill or Gregory Towns. Sometimes there's not justice. We want to make sure that Georgia gets this right. That's why the NAACP is standing shoulder to shoulder with this family, with their attorneys, and with the community. But we also want everyone to know that we will elevate the names of the other victims so that not one more injustice happens in this state. So the occasion is now, Georgia has a brutality problem. This is not a one-off. In Atlanta, Georgia, there are cases that are sitting on the prosecutor's desk. In Gwinnett County, there are cases that are sitting on the prosecutor's desk. And now in Glenn County, there is a case sitting on the prosecutor's desk.
And so that was sound from the press conference that we had at the Georgia and the Atlanta NAACP office. And clearly we have a history of issues in this state. And we wanted to make sure we elevated the voice of the family. So we joined with the family's lawyers. We joined with the concerned black clergy and many others that were present. And I want to give you some sound from the family's attorney. This is Lee Merritt talking at the press conference.
Evidence is inadmissible, and because it's unreliable, we don't know who administers this so-called lie detector test. It is junk science. But the evidence in the case will be presented, so that the police report where it describes him blocking off Ahmaud and cutting off his path of exit will be admitted. The video that he took while doing it, where he pursued Ahmaud at close range and recorded him being shot 3 times up close without making a sound, his reaction, that will be presented to the grand jury. The evidence that the additional videos that have not made it into the media yet, that hopefully will not until it's presented to a trier of fact, that will be presented, and that will show that he was intimately involved in the murder of Ahmaud Arbery.
And so that was Lee Merritt, the lead attorney for the family of Ahmaud Arbery. Present also was Chris Stewart, who is co-counsel with Lee Merritt, representing the family. And of course, Benjamin Crump was not present, but he is also an attorney for the family. And so at that press conference, we outlined the necessaries that are necessary for justice. And so I kind of wanted to catch everybody up. It's been a minute since we've been on the Justicefighter podcast talking about this case. And so I wanted to hop on the pod and just give you guys some updates. So since the last time we talked, we've been down to Glenn County twice. First time went down for the rally, and the second time went down with state lawmakers who introduced a proposition to name the anti-hate legislation that is currently pending in the Georgia State House, which is House Bill 426, after Ahmaud Arbery as the anti-hate crime legislation, because Georgia is one of 4 states that don't have hate crime legislation and one of 3 states that have no civil rights protection at the state level. So that's happening. And then, of course, there was a caravan that we saw off last Saturday, which was led by a coalition of Just Georgia, of many grassroots organizers in the state of Georgia who took a caravan of over 200 cars down to Glenn County to have a massive protest in conjunction with the organizers on the ground. So there's been a lot of work in this case and around this case and organizing, but I wanted to make sure people understood that we have a lot of more work to do in this organizing space for justice for Ahmaud Arbery. Namely, there's going to be another march. This is the March for Quez. It's being put on by the men of Omega Psi Phi down in Southeast Georgia. That will be May the 23rd, and that will be at the Glenn County Courthouse, I believe, starting at 10 o'clock. So if you want to get involved, be there, 701 H Street, Brunswick, Georgia, I believe at 10 o'clock this upcoming Saturday. So if you want to get involved. And there will be other marches and rallies. There are several by-county rallies and marches that are being planned, and I will bring you information for that as soon as I know. But we also need to be prepared not only for the legislation, but for the litigation. And so Travis and Gregory McMichael have now hired counsel. They are independently represented by the attorneys for them. One is the Hogue family, the husband and wife team that represent Gregory McMichael, and Travis is now represented by Bob Rubin and Jason Sheffield from Decatur. So they have lawyers at this point, and they have not filed motions for bond, but we will keep you updated when the motions for bond are scheduled so we can get prepared to go down to Glenn County to be present and let the court know that we are very interested in the outcome of this matter. So that's upcoming. So again, like I posted on my social media, the way we get change is agitation, legislation, and litigation, and we're going to stay on top of this case and bring you information. So there's been a lot of breaking information that's happened in this case. Of course, Travis and Gregory have been arrested. Now they're in jail with no bond. There's an active investigation by the GBI and the FBI where a search warrant was executed yesterday. Actually, it was Tuesday night. The search warrant was executed on the house where they searched the house, and they're in the process of investigating and interviewing witnesses and getting prepared. There's a special prosecutor who's been appointed. That's Joyette Holmes, who is the sitting DA of Cobb County. And there's also a new judge because the judges in Glenn County recused themselves. So a judge out of Chatham County will be sitting for the duration of this case. And so I'll bring you more information on that. But we are starting to see the movement in the justice system on this case. We have to remember that we're still in a judicial emergency because of COVID-19. And so there will not be any substantive hearings, at least until June the 13th. There may be a bond hearing, but as far as substantive hearings like grand juries being impaneled to hear and potentially indict the McMichaels, that won't happen until after June the 13th. And then, of course, the legislative session doesn't start back until June the 11th because we are still in COVID-19. So I wanted to bring this information to you on the platform from here from Justice Media so you can know in real time what's happening, how you can get involved, and how you can get plugged in. And there are several ways that you can get plugged in. One, of course, is by listening to this podcast and staying in tune with Justice Media and the Justicefighter. But you can also go to runwithmod.com or IRunWithMod, the hashtag, to get up-to-date information about what's happening in this case and to get plugged in, to go to the Atlanta NAACP page or the Georgia NAACP page to get action items. There are several. And you can also go to the Just Georgia Coalition. They are organizing as well. So there are lots of organizing that's going on. There are several national organizations that are signing on. I'm hearing Rainbow Push, as well as the SCLC and National Action Network are signing on to assist the NAACP. But as you know, the NAACP has been on this case since its very beginning through the work of the Brunswick chapter and the leadership of John Perry, who's been on this case from the very beginning. And thank you to the leadership of James Woodall from the state conference to elevate that work. And of course, thank you to Richard Rose with the Atlanta chapter, who has also been assisting in this matter. But we want you guys to have the information in real time so you can know what's happening, how you can get plugged in, what are the facts in this case, what is opinion, and of course, what is the law. So the facts of this case, again, is February the 23rd, Ahmaud Arbery was going for a jog in the Scintilla Shores neighborhood. He was running down Holmes Drive when he was confronted by Gregory McMichael and Travis McMichael and Roddy Bryant was filming, and he was shot 3 times at close range by a shotgun. There has been information released about an incident that occurred on February the 11th where there was a previous individual who walked through the home and was confronted or attempted to be confronted by Travis McMichael. There's police reports out about that. There's video surveillance footage of that, that no one has confirmed that was in fact Ahmaud Arbery. And there are some issues with the description of that person, being that Ahmaud was a dark-complected individual, and this person that was seen in the February 11th video is clearly light-skinned, and the police report says that as well. And then there's, of course, the video that happened on the 23rd where you see Ahmaud in the new construction. The owner of the new construction indicated that nothing criminal happened, nothing was taken, and he was not aware of any crimes that were attempted to be looked into. There's some background information that we're still collecting on that. But then, of course, Ahmaud leaves the house, and that's where there's surveillance footage of him leaving the house. And then you see the truck pull behind him. There's a cut of time of about 4 minutes or so, and then you get the video where we all saw what happened in the video. So those are the facts that we know. There's a lot of background information that's coming out about the character of the McMichaels and the character of Ahmaud Arbery. None of that's relevant to the decision about what happened on the 23rd. And we've been hearing a lot about this Georgia's citizen's arrest statute and, of course, Georgia's self-defense statute. And I think it's important to understand from the citizen's arrest standpoint, based on the facts and the law, there appears to have not been a lawful citizen's arrest attempted, because from the 911 tape and from the police report, the McMichaels did not articulate a felony that was in progress, which would necessitate the Georgia citizen's arrest statute. Hence, that's why they arrested. And then as well as self-defense, that is a trial defense that they are going to have to raise. And there are going to be some serious issues with that, because in order to claim self-defense in Georgia, you cannot be the primary aggressor, and you have to be defending oneself from the imminent unlawful use of either serious force or deadly force. And in this case, the only people that were armed were the McMichaels. So there's going to be some issues with whether or not they are entitled to self-defense. I'm sure their lawyers will file the necessary immunity motions on that, and we will have an immunity hearing. But there are a lot of opinions going on social media, a lot of outside observations, but I think it's important for us to know what the law is and then to gauge the law to the facts and get to the bottom of this, and that will happen in a courtroom. So I respect everybody's opinion. I have my own opinion. Of course, I've been quite vocal on what my opinion is, and that's that there should have been an arrest a long time ago. Now there has been an arrest, and now we will go through the criminal justice process for the McMichaels, and ultimately, I believe, based on my reading of the case law and the facts in this case, there will be a conviction for malice murder, because that's what happened out there. But I want to make sure that I bring this information to you in an understandable method, an understandable platform, with the law and the facts as we know them, based on the police reports, based on the actual footage, both the surveillance footage and the video recording, and then, of course, my review of the neighborhood. Now, we walked that neighborhood twice, and what people need to know is there are other houses that are equipped with surveillance footage. I don't know if the GBI or the FBI have that as well yet, but there are 2 active investigations going on, and then there are calls for other investigations into what happened behind the scenes on this case once it was received by Jackie Johnson and by George Barnhill and then by Tom Durden, who are the 3 prosecutors that preceded Joyette Holmes, who's now the lead special prosecutor on this case. So there's a lot of moving parts that are happening in this case in real time that we have to make sure we are aware of, and that we study, and we make sure that there's transparency and in the process, and there's fairness. We have to make sure that this case, everything happens above board, because in my trip down to Glenn County twice, I received reports of what seems to be a culture of corruption that has to be investigated. So we're going to stay on that to make sure that there's nothing nefarious that happens in this case that's not reported and ultimately held accountable for anyone who did anything nefarious. But I think the most important thing as far as justice for Ahmaud is that everyone stays engaged. They realize that this is a marathon, not a sprint, that we have organizations of grassroots organizers on the ground, the lawyers, as you heard from Lee Merritt, and you will hear at some point on my platform from him and from Chris Stewart and hopefully from Attorney Ben Crump, that they're working as well as they can behind the scenes to gather enough information for justice. And of course, the special prosecutor is working and gathering her information with the help of the GBI. So all of this is happening right now in real time. And I wanted to bring you that update here on the platform on Justice Media. This is the Justice Fighter, Attorney Griggs, and I will keep you in tune with what's happening in Brunswick with this case and all the other cases, because like I said before, this is not a one-off. This is standard operating procedure in Georgia, and we have to make sure that that standard operating procedure changes and there's justice for all these families. So I'm Attorney Gerald Griggs, the Justice Fighter. Thank you for tuning in to the podcast.
This is the Justice Fighter Podcast. Justice Fighter Podcast. With Attorney Gerald Griggs. Attorney G. Where we have conversations on social justice, civil rights, and political news that affects us all. Let Attorney Griggs put you on game. Only on the Justice Fighter Podcast, y'all.
What's going on, y'all? It's Attorney Gerald Griggs, the Justice Fighter, and this episode of the Justice Fighter Podcast was brought to you by Attorney Gerald Griggs and Gerald A. Griggs, LLC. It was brought to you by Trillmonger. It was brought to you by Carter Media, and it was also brought to you by Justice Media. So please tune in to the podcast on all streaming platforms. It's on Apple, it's on Google, it's on Spotify, it's on Stitcher, it's on YouTube, and it's everywhere where you can get podcasts. So please tune in, help us keep the movement alive, help us keep justice being able to rain down, but more importantly, help us keep bringing the truth to you. This is Attorney Gerald Griggs, the Justice Fighter. Thank you for tuning in to Justice Media.